Let me start out with a brief poem by Thich Nhat Hanh, and I've posted this poem in the chat and a link to another reading that we'll do later. Being peace. If we are peaceful, if we are happy, we can smile and blossom like a flower. And everyone in our family, our entire society will benefit from our peace. David gave such a wonderful talk, 2 talks this week. I'm attending deeply with loving kindness to our physical bodies, seeing ourselves with warmth and kindliness, recognizing the impact that we have on our bodies and the kindness and wisdom our bodies offer us. When we practice with love and kindliness, we bring ease and comfort to our bodies rather than demanding more of our bodies, requiring pain in order to have gain, releasing demands and expectations, and loving our bodies, ourselves, just as we are. This is powerful practice. And I also began thinking of our other bodies that we can impact with our practice. We have many bodies, I think, our individual physical wind instrument bodies that have been loaned to us for this limited, impermanent lifetime. We also have the body of our families, the body of our communities, the body of our Sanghas. As I mentioned last week, I've been thinking a lot about experiences I've had at retreats conducted by Thich Nhat Hanh and his monks and nuns from Plum Village. I think it was the first retreat I attended, perhaps at the University of Massachusetts. There were over 500 people. And I got there and we were registering and standing in long lines during the heat of summer. And the first thing I noticed, the line was much more quiet than most long lines I've ever stood in. And the people were more friendly, less irritated. They were smiling and laughing. And I thought, well, this is a good start. I registered and I read the rules. And at the time, I'm not even sure if we had cell phones now. Excuse me for dating myself with that. But there were pagers and other things. And it said no pagers, no remote devices, no name badges, no signs of who I was in the outer world or what my status was or what my professional credentials were. And it was even highly recommended that we not even read books. Uh-oh, this was one of my primary go-tos for escape, for comfort, to intellectualize when the world was too emotionally overwhelming for me. So there I was in my little college dorm room, no frills, no air conditioning, just me. And I just about had a full-blown panic attack. Who was I without all the outward signs, outward indications of who I was? Okay, I managed to calm down and get myself settled in. As I look back on this experience, it really epitomizes in many of the aspects that we're talking about in terms of loving kindness. The kindness and consideration and slowing down of standing in long lines. That slowing down in order to cultivate the qualities of mindfulness and kindliness and releasing, not relying on my self-referential identity, as Jay talked about the other week. Not those externalized representations of this reified self, this self that I think has some permanent independent identity, that's so much a part of my perceptions, so much a part of my daily life, so that when I let go of those, there's all that uncertainty that almost threw me into a panic. But putting aside my typical self allowed me to see with the eyes of kindness that David spoke of, to see myself and others with friendliness and kindliness, and not just out of my limited Lori agenda, to see with those kind and mindful eyes, to see and embrace the wider Sangha body, and to see how this Sangha body impacted even the larger community body. And one of the memories that really stuck out was the impact of 500 people practicing together on a daily basis in silence on all the others around them. For example, the impact on the staff of the dining hall where we ate all our meals, the cooks, the folks who served us the food, who worked in the kitchen. The first day when we went for our first meal, the staff, the cooks, the people who served us were talking loudly, yelling back of force. Some of it was pretty harsh. Bring that over here, get rid of this, move it, what are you doing? Need more scrambled eggs over here, get your butt moving, you know. And there we were walking slowly through the line in silence, and the staff was doing their usual back and forth. But as we walked slowly through the food line, that meal, we pointed out what we wanted, bowing in gratitude, smiling when the food was offered to us, trying to communicate, and sometimes whispering very quietly when we could notice the frustration on the server's face when they didn't know what we were pointing at. And as we continued having our meals, I noticed that over time, over a day or so, the kitchen staff got quieter. They started moving more slowly. They smiled more and yelled less. They were more at ease. They weren't sitting with us. They weren't going to our Dharma talks. They weren't participating in the retreat, but there was an osmosis going on. And at the end of the retreat, when we had our last session, we invited the kitchen staff to come in so that we could thank them for all that they had provided us, the nourishment, the care. And they all commented on their thankfulness for the kind atmosphere, for the peaceful atmosphere that just happened as a result of the fruits of our practice. And they said they were really going to miss us. The feeling of loving kindness, the warm-heartedness just flowed. And there were many tears at that human connection, that impact, that just being in our practice provided that community. Another memory of that retreat that remains to me to this day as evidence of the fruits of the practice was a result of our walking meditation. We would walk in the morning from our dorm rooms and we'd gather and do some calisthenics that were led by Thich Nhat Hanh, which was an absolute delight, very gentle, just to wake up our bodies like we do before we sit and meditate. Very gentle, very attuned to taking care of what our bodies needed in that moment. And then we'd all walk over to the meditation hall, which was across a road over which people were driving. And we were walking mindfully, slowly, quietly across this somewhat busy road where people were traveling, trying to get from one place to another. First thing in the morning, the drivers of the car, they had places to go. They had things to do. They had deadlines to meet. They had to get to work. They had to drop off their kids and all of that. So you might imagine if you were stopped at a crosswalk with these people, this large group of people walking slowly across your road. It's like watching geese cross the road. If you've ever been in that situation, they never seem to be in any hurry. They're looking around, they're stopping, they don't care where you have to be. Well, it wasn't that we didn't care, but we would look at the people in the cars and we would smile, sometimes a little apologetically, sorry. And we'd listen to the honks of the cars and appreciate the suffering of that impatience. And we'd stop sometimes to let the cars go through, and then we'd start crossing the road again. Every morning, every lunchtime, every dinner time, we were crossing that road. And the people in the cars had no idea of what was going on campus, what this was about. But over time, there were fewer honks. There were fewer annoyed looks. And the people in the cars started waving back, giving us the peace sign, bowing back to us. And they seemed to become more peaceful. They didn't speed off as soon as they had a chance. They just drove more slowly off. And they weren't going to our sessions. They weren't listening to the Dharma talks. They weren't sitting in silence, but they began to practice car mindfulness, becoming more patient, being able to slow down, being able to make much of a moment to take a break without agitation and annoyance. It was an amazing impact on people I would never know, never meet, never interact with in any other way. Yet the peace was spread. The loving friendliness was spread within that community. And it certainly was one of the more moving and memorable aspects of that retreat. And it's sustained me often in my practice. The power of our practice on the world around us, on the people I live with, on my family members, on the Sangha bodies I belong to, on the community bodies I'm a part of. Some of the impacts I see and understand, and others I may never know about. It's helped me to continue in times of stress and overwhelm and depletion. What I do matters, even if in only very small ways that I may never see the ripples go out. Now, while we certainly don't often have the presence of over 500 practitioners acting together in community to see the impact on community, we can notice whatever impact we have on all of those bodies, and more on that tomorrow. And to end this talk, another quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. There is a lot of suffering, yes, and we have to embrace all this suffering. But to get strong, we also need to touch the positive elements. And when we are strong, we can embrace the suffering in us and all around us. If we see a group of people living mindfully, capable of smiling, of loving, we gain confidence in our future. When we practice mindful breathing, smiling, resting, walking, and working, then we become a positive element in society, and we will inspire confidence all around us. It is also the way to help the younger generation so they do not lose hope. It is very important that we live our daily life in such a way that demonstrates that a future is possible. So thank you so much for your kind attention